Can you catch the hidden twist in today's opening story? Stay tuned to the end of today's show to find out the answer. On my way to work each day, I passed by an empty apartment building that was scheduled to be demolished. Many people used the building to commit suicide, and there were numerous reports of ghost sightings in the area as well. There were no nearby lights, so it was pretty creepy come nighttime. One night, I was returning home from work around 11 p.m., trembling as I walked past the building. I looked up and saw a shadow at the top of the building. Terrified, I thought my heart would stop, but looking closer, there wasn't actually anyone there. No way, a ghost? I thought. But then the next moment, somebody jumped. The sound of the body hitting the concrete made an awful sound, and I saw a young woman lying there. I panicked and called an ambulance right away, then slowly approached her body. She was covered in blood, her legs sticking up in unnatural directions. She was no ghost, but I was still terrified. People came running out onto the veranda to see what all the noise was about. The ambulance soon arrived and took her away. I went home, but that night I was unable to sleep, the scene playing over and over in my mind. The next day, I heard that the woman was in a serious condition, but she was alive. If she had died in front of me, that really would have been traumatic. Hey guys, I'm your host, Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to another episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. On this week's episode, we're going to be looking at some of the most read and highly ranked Japanese creepypastas from last year. But before we get started, did you know that we also have a newsletter where you can get even more exclusive stories and news? Get stories delivered straight to your inbox that you won't find anywhere else by heading over to kowabana.net/newsletter. It goes out once a week on Sundays, and depending on the week, you'll get exclusive news, updates, creepypastas, urban legends, and more. That's kowabana.net/newsletter. Now, on this week's show, we have a variety of stories that made up the most read ranks for 2018. These are the stories that Japanese audiences were glued to and sharing the most. If you want to know what's entertaining Japanese audiences today, stay tuned, because we're about to find out. Our first story for this week is about a production member who acquires ghost photos and videos for the TV show he works on. He gets in contact with the owner of a particularly scary video, but things soon take a turn for the unexpected. Find out why in Tale from the Ghost Production. This strange story took place when I was working as a staff member on a ghost production show for TV. People who regularly watch these types of programs will likely already know, but ghost videos are common for these types of shows. Apparently, it's a behind-the-scenes secret that if a medium appears on the show, they'll get a lot of complaints. But these types of shows also don't really have much of a budget to begin with. Television channels are also going through hard times, so it's easier and cheaper to pay people for their home videos and use those. But on the other hand, location shooting is the exact opposite. Filming at an abandoned building with a medium can often be finished and ready for production quite quickly. And it's not like we can just take videos from YouTube to use. You need to find the original creators and get their consent. It's a lot of work. Contacting a company like the one who runs the Hontou ni Atta series is easy, but other places are more difficult, and we often get no reply. That's why you often see the same videos getting used again and again. It's a vicious circle, N-kun is one of those ADs who tries to get consent to use videos. This is what happened to him when he went searching through a certain website one time to find videos for a Ghost Spot special. The following is his story. So, there was a video of a group of kids who went to visit a ghost spot, right? They captured something that looked like a ghost, and there was a big fuss. They commented on the ghost, and it seemed like a good video to use, so I contacted them. The next day, he got back to me and gave us permission to use the video. However, using video straight from the internet on TV results in poor quality viewing, so I asked him if I could borrow the master copy. Of course, he said and agreed. He didn't live too far from my house, so I arranged to go and pick it up from him directly. That night, I went to his house. He lived on the second floor of a student dorm, about 15 minutes from the station. I rang the doorbell and waited. I was right on time, but there was no sign anybody was inside. I rang the doorbell again, and again, but there wasn't a single sound from inside. Then, the door to the neighbouring apartment opened, and a young woman came out. Thinking that repeatedly ringing the bell might have been a little noisy, I prepared to apologise, but the girl looked at me suspiciously. You know that apartment's empty, right? According to the girl, the person who lived there moved out 3 years earlier, and it had been empty ever since. Thinking I'd been played, I sent the man another message. This time, the reply came not from him, but from the phone company. This address does not exist, it said. I panicked and called him directly. This number is currently not in use, it said. I'd spoken to him on that very number not more than an hour earlier. It was past 9 p.m, so it wasn't like he could have gone to the store and cancelled his phone contract in the meantime. I had no idea what was going on, or what large-scale trickery was at hand. In the end, I went home, still no idea of what was going on. The next day, I went out to see a medium to get a comment for the show. She suddenly turned and looked at me. "Aren't you glad you didn't see him?" she said. I asked her what she meant exactly, but she wouldn't say anything else. And as for the video, you can still see it online, but I haven't tried getting in contact with the owner since. It's just a waste of time. When I went to visit another company to receive a bunch of videos, he told me something about the owner of that one. He killed himself a while back. So, that was that, hey? TV shows about ghost photos and videos are especially popular during summer, the horror season in Japan, when things are hot, humid, and haunted. The photos and videos are always clearly fake, but they're still fun to watch regardless. Our next story sees two friends taking a trip around the countryside. When they arrive in a small village, they see everyone has already locked up for the night and refuses to come out. Unfortunately for them, they're about to find out why. This one's called The Thing from the Sea. I'm good friends with one of my colleagues, and we often go places together. But whenever I ask him to go to the beach, he always stubbornly refuses. I asked him why, but he didn't seem to want to talk about it. So, I got him drunk instead, and asked him about it then. This is what he told me. He was drunk at the time, so it didn't all make perfect sense, but I've done my best to put it all together. When I was a student, I went on a trip with one of my friends. It must have been after our final tests, so right in the middle of winter. It wasn't really a trip so much as me, my friend, and his dog riding around aimlessly in his van. I don't know what day it was, but we were approaching a dying village near a beach, and the sun was setting. It was a small hamlet, barely holding on between the mountains and the beach. We were about to run out of gas, so we drove along the lone straight road looking for a gas station. We found one, but it was already closed for the day. We got out of the van and decided to check around the back. A bamboo draining basket was hanging from the eave of the door. I pushed past it, thinking how annoying it must be there, and rang the bell for assistance. "Excuse me, we need gas." It felt like somebody was there, but there was no response. Are they ignoring us? They better not be. I'll ring it again. I pressed the button over and over, and finally the shadow of someone appeared behind the glass. "Who are you?" "We need gas. We're closed today." Before I was even done talking, he cut me off in an irritated tone. "No, but could you just..." "No, we're not opening today." There was nothing we could do. We returned to the van. This is why I hate the countryside. Oh well, what can we do? Let's just sleep here for the night. We'll just get gas when he opens up in the morning. We looked for somewhere to park the van around the village. We soon noticed that it wasn't just the gas station that was closed. All the shops were, and even the front gates to all the houses were closed. Looking closer, all the buildings had baskets and sieves hanging from their eaves. Maybe it's a festival. It's a bit quiet for that, don't you think? Yeah. Man, this wind is strong. Maybe we can park over there. There was a wide open stone base at the bottom of a hillside shrine facing the water. It was a small parking lot, but a hedge surrounding it would probably keep the worst of the wind out. We parked the car in the shadow of the shrine gate. Outside was already dark, and we had nothing else to do, so we bundled up and chatted in the front seat until we fell asleep. The dog's barking woke us up. The area stank of something raw and bloody. The dog was baring its fangs towards the sea, snarling. He was usually a quiet dog, and no amount of trying to calm him down worked. My friend got up and looked out into the darkness. Under the moonlight, the sea looked different to before. It was eerily calm, but for something crawling near the concrete eyesore of a wharf. "What the hell is that?" My friend's voice cracked as he whispered. "I dunno." It looked like a fat pipe or log crawling out of the ocean at first. It was like a snake wriggling onto land, but strangely, it made no sound. It might be better to say that it looked like it was made of black smoke, but we couldn't tell whether it even had a real body underneath it. Instead, the thing just moaned. The raw, bloody smell from before grew stronger, enough that I felt like throwing up. The front half of the thing crossed over the road leading along the beach and made its way towards the houses, while the rest of it disappeared back into the ocean. It attempted to peer into the houses from beneath the eaves, and although we couldn't see it clearly, it appeared to have some kind of face. Now, we're not cowards, but that thing out there brought up just one word in my mind. Sinister. That thing was Sinister. Just one glance at it left us frozen and unable to move. It was like it had a tight grip on our very hearts. It appeared to be looking very intently at the sieve hanging from the eaves. And then finally, it slowly started shuffling towards the next house. "Oi, let's get out of here." My friend's trembling voice finally brought me back. I managed to lift my hand towards the key and turn it, and the engine roared in the silence. The thing turned slowly to look at us. "Shit," I thought. I didn't know why, but I somehow knew that I shouldn't look into its eyes. I stared straight ahead, slammed my foot down on the accelerator, and pulled out of the parking lot. The dog in the back started to whimper like it was having an asthma attack, and then fell over. "Tato!" my friend screamed. He turned back and suddenly his breath caught in his throat. "Idiot! Don't look back!" I grabbed his shoulder and did my best to force him back to the front. His face spasmed and his eyes were unfocused. It was a little embarrassing, but I was so scared that I could do nothing but cry and keep pushing down on the accelerator. We continued down the road until we ran out of gas, and then waited for morning to come. We didn't get a wink of sleep, but my friend was barely conscious. He was admitted to a nearby hospital and spent close to a week passed out with a fever. Even after he got better, just broaching the subject would cause him to revert back to the same state again, so I never asked him what exactly he saw that night when he turned around. We haven't really seen each other since graduation anyway. As for his dog, he was crazed and tried to bite anybody and everybody. He was constantly foaming at the mouth and falling over, so sadly, they had to put him down. In the end, I still don't know what that thing was, nor do I want to know. At any rate, that's why I don't ever want to go near the ocean again. That's the story my colleague told me. It made me think of that story by Yanagita Kunio, how in folklore, sieves and bamboo baskets were used to ward against evil, and the story about refraining from looking at the sea. I don't have it on hand right now though, so I can't compare the stories directly. Have you ever had complaints of noise coming from your apartment while you're not there? This guy has. Find out what's going on in The Medium's Discovery. I'm a third-year university student, but the apartment I'm staying in right now is insane. Or rather, it was insane. So, I live on the 3rd floor. All of this took place last summer. When I got home from uni one day, the landlord handed me a letter. It was addressed to me. Around lunchtime each day, the sound of water running in your bathroom can be heard from outside. Please close the window. We can hear the voices of children playing loudly. Please keep it down. Of course, at lunchtime I was at school, and I didn't have any kids. I went to ask my neighbours about it, and they said, we knew about the children, but isn't it for the best that they're so happy and energetic?" Honestly, I had no idea what was going on. I decided to call the real estate. As I expected, they were hesitant to answer. Well, you see, some time ago. Apparently, a family used to live in my same apartment. The 2 kids suffered abuse at the hands of their parents, and one of them died as a result. They investigated the apartment several times after that, but never found anything. "Well, something's happening now," I told them, and they offered to introduce me to a spirit medium. 5 days later, the medium arrived and took a look around my apartment. "There's nothing here," she said, "but there's something sad about that closet." She started digging through it, and although she didn't find anything inside, when she moved aside the top plank, she discovered a pair of shoes with something scrawled in messy writing. "Found me." "I don't need to perform an exorcism," the medium said. "I just need to cleanse these." She sprinkled the shoes with water and then lit some incense. "We can't leave them there like this, so I want you to place them by the front door for a week." For the duration of that week, when I returned home from school, I found acorns by the shoes, and I heard strange noises. But after the medium took the shoes with her, it all stopped. Since then, nothing of note has occurred. I received a sum of money from the real estate in apology, and I really like the apartment, so I'm still living here. But maybe you should check your closet as well. There might be something hiding in there. Our last story for this week involves two young kids who stumble across something they shouldn't at a pond in the mountains. The adults told them to stay away, but they didn't listen. Find out why they should have in Rope from the Lake. This happened when I was in elementary school, about 20 years ago. My parents' family home was on an island in the Seto Sea, and each summer holidays we went back for a visit. As a city kid from Tokyo, I really enjoyed playing in the beautiful ocean and mountains, but the thing I looked forward to the most was catching stag and rhinoceros beetles in the mountains. There was a large pond up on the mountain, and we kids were forbidden to go there alone. But there were no adults who could get up early during the Obon holidays to join me while I caught bugs. So, one day at around 4 in the morning, I went up there with my cousin, who was 1 year older than me. We got wrapped up in catching bugs, but then we heard a noise coming from somewhere nearby. At first, I thought it was a bug or a bird, but listening closer, it sounded like someone crying. Was it another kid out catching bugs like us? Maybe they tripped over in the dim light. I went with my cousin in the direction of the sound, and we found a child, about 3 or 4 years old, sitting by the side of the pond. There was nobody else around. A young child up here all alone? It was too strange, but there was something even more odd. The child had a rope tied around his waist like a belt, which extended into the water. I followed it with my gaze, and at regular intervals, roughly 1.5 meters apart, the rope was tied to something floating in the water. There were 6 of them in total. "What's that?" I thought. Suddenly, the rope pulled taut, and the kid went flying into the water. "Oh no!" I thought, but I couldn't move. Out the corner of my eye, I could see my cousin was frozen to the spot as well. I had no concept of what paralysis was, so I began to panic. Oh no, what pulled that kid into the water? A crocodile? Did Japan even have crocodiles? A yokai? Help us, Onitaro! Whatever it was continued dragging the kid into the water, while wild thoughts ran through my head. When people walk, they of course move their feet, but this kid wasn't moving his feet at all. He was sliding slowly towards the lake like he was on ice. Being a stupid kid, I thought it had to be the work of a yokai, but my cousin, being 1 year older than me and someone who saw things more rationally, started to recite a chant to Buddha. By the time the kid had fully disappeared into the pond, I was able to move again and ran down the mountain at full speed. We went home and told the adults about what we'd just seen, but we were so excited that they didn't understand us. At first they thought a child had drowned and panicked, running to call the fire department, but I screamed, "It was a yokai! A yokai did it!" After things calmed down, they got the story from me again in more detail. They didn't appear to believe me, but maybe something rang true. After that, they took us out into the garden and began throwing salt at us. They ended up calling the fire department anyway, just in case, but they were unable to find anyone. When we asked the adults about it later, they said we must have been tired and imagined it. Many years later, I finally asked about what happened there again. Apparently, a few decades earlier, a family committed suicide by drowning in that pond. It was around 3 or 4 in the morning. Those who live nearby say they heard a child crying around that time. There were 7 people in the family, all tied together by a single rope. The locals even had another name for that pond. They called it the Suicide 7 Pond. Did you catch the hidden twist in today's opening story? The narrator mentions the building is empty and about to be torn down. Yet when the woman jumps, several people come running out of the building to the veranda to see what the noise is. If the building is empty, then who came running out? And that brings us to the end of this week's show. Want even more? You can get over 20 exclusive episodes by joining our Patreon right now, as well as early access to all future episodes, and help us towards our goal of producing longer episodes each fortnight. You can find us at patreon.com/TaraADevlin. Every single little bit of support helps. Thanks guys, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.